Welcome to the Schmooze, Calgary's weekly community podcast where we bring together the voices, events, and stories shaping Jewish life in our city. I'm Don Shapiro with Jared Shore. Pull up a chair. Let's schmooze. We just spent about an hour chatting with Yael Berkovich, and you're going to learn about this inspirational young woman shortly. But I'll say when I would play poker with my friends at night or be at parties, and we'd lament about the current state of our youth in the world today, it was never complimentary. And then October 7th happened. And what we saw within our community, within the Jewish community, is young people, especially in Israel, rise up and how they fought for our country and our ideals was something that was very, very inspirational. And what I see in those souls is the same spirit I saw in Yael Berkovich. This is a young, fierce Jewish lioness who is also probably one of the sweetest, kindest and just bubbly personalities I've ever met. Always willing to help, always willing to lend a hand, yet stand her ground and really some of the more extreme situations that we found out throughout this that I wasn't even aware of. And so I walk away from this podcast or this schmooze with Yael feeling really inspired and hopeful despite some of the other events and some of the other things still happening at our universities and happening around Canada at our synagogues and at our schools, but seeing people, knowing that people like Yale exist, certainly helps me go to sleep at night.
You know, Yael is she's not reckless.
No.
She's thoughtful, but she is out there, not shy about who she is. And you know, she talked about her background and her parents' background coming from the Iron Curtain, where the thing to do was be very quiet about being a Jew, and understandably so. But in this environment, which is amazing, Yael is not quiet about being a Jew and a Zionist. And frankly, I think her thoughtfulness behind it, her authenticity behind it, um, it's actually it's there's been a lot of rewards. There's been a lot of wins. And if nothing comes from people listening to this, I hope it's that their kids say, I don't yeah, it's scary on campus. Campus is a really tricky place, but I can't cede the ground. I can't deny who I am. And Yael is an amazing exemplar of being authentic and being true to being a Zionist Jew. She's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I think I only realized who I was around the age of 40, and she got to that spot a whole lot earlier. So
She's got a good resume. She's got a good
her
resume.
resume is amazing. What she does with Stand With Us currently, all her experiences through all the different, I guess, youth-oriented alphabet soup, where we
Yeah,
sometimes get
yeah.
focused on the adult alphabet soup, but there's a lot of programs out there for youth, and we go over all of that. And really, it comes down to, I mean, her parents did a great job, obviously. You know, she's cited them as her mentors and her idols, and I can certainly see why, and it's paid off. So, Yael, again, this was a very inspirational, very moving, and fun schmooze. I really enjoyed this one.
Me too. Me too. Okay, and she talked about an event, and we've
Right.
got you and I now that we're back from our holidays. We have a couple events to talk about to highlight for the community. So obviously, the community calendar is out there. If you want to stay in tune with everything, please make sure you are signing up on Jewish Calgary's mailing list.
Right.
And I'm trying to see what day this, I think the newsletter for Calgary Together, Jewish Calgary Together comes out, I think on a Tuesday, a list of everything that's happening in Jewish Calgary. So Don and I are going to go through all of it, but highlight a couple. One event that I do want to highlight is the Momentum Night Out Party this January 17th, Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. The Momentum Group, they're fantastic. It's a group of moms, Jewish moms, and they went on a really, really meaningful trip to Israel last spring. This is an inspired group of people, and so if you feel like you would like to be a part of this group, January 17th at 7 p.m., go on Jewish Calgary's website to find out more. Location is to be announced.
Yeah, and we're hoping also in the nearer future to have one of the representatives from that group here talk about that trip because from what I understood, it was quite moving for everybody
Hmm.
involved. One event that already actually started on the 5th, on this past Monday, is at the Calgary Central Downtown Library, and it's an exhibit called One Thread, 6 Million Lives, and it's a poignant exhibit that traces the Nazi mechanisms of persecution through the story of one survivor in particular, and his name's Wolf Woznicka or Willie. And it is a very, very moving exhibit. It's free. It's at the downtown Calgary Public Library. And I believe this is going to be going on right through to the beginning of February. So
Hmm.
if you have some time, you find yourself downtown, this is definitely an event worth going to because, as we all know, later on this month is International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yep, indeed, and we'll be fortunate as we draw closer to that day to welcome a couple guests who will be on to speak about that
Yeah.
in coming weeks.
Yeah, and in the event, and I guess I'm just thinking about it right now. There is an event that Yael talks about at the end of the podcast, and we will share that as more information comes out of more specifics when we talk about the violins of hope. Now, what the violins of hope, she talked about a violin being restored, and
Hmm.
what does that violin being restored mean? It is that violin is being restored from somebody who either survived the Holocaust or it was owned by somebody who did not. And the violin was carefully restored by a not-for-profit group for Violins of Hope. We had an exhibit on that a couple of years ago at
National Music Center.
the National Music Center, where they still have a
Mhm.
couple of the violins there, I understand, on display. So it's going to be a heck of a an event coming up, and like I said, we will be posting about that as we go. Um, Folks, it is our absolute pleasure right now to show you and to play the our schmooze with Yael Berkovich. Thanks again for listening in.
Thanks.
Campuses across Canada are changing, and students are being asked to navigate complex conversations about Israel, anti Semitism, and free expression. Stand With This Canada exists to make sure they're not doing it alone. Through leadership programs like the Emerson Fellowship, Stand With This Canada equips Jewish and non Jewish students with training, mentorship, and real world tools to educate their peers, challenge misinformation, and respond to anti Semitism on campus. If you know a student or are a student ready to lead with confidence and clarity, learn more at standwithus.com/Canada. Because leadership isn't about being loud, it's about being prepared.
Welcome everybody to this a new edition of the Schmooze. With us today, we're really excited to have Yael Berkovich with us. She is, I'd like to say, a rising star among the youth, the Jewish community youth sort of perspective. But Yael, you've been doing this for years, so you've been involved in a lot of things. The more we kind of chat, the more I get to know you, the more impressed I become. So welcome to the Schmooze.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, El, so nice to have you here. You and I have not had a chance to meet before, so it's going to be an opportunity for me and the audience to get to know you a little bit better. Um, Don has alluded to the fact that you're a young leader. I always sort of took that personally. I didn't want to be a young leader. I just wanted to be a leader. But now I actually want to be a young leader.
That's
Tell
right.
us what tell us what brought you to be a young leader.
Yeah, so honestly, I mean, I was born in Israel. My parents were born in Belarus, moved to Israel, and then experienced the first and second Intifada. And after that, we moved to Canada. So I've always grown up in a very Zionist, very Jewish household. And honestly, my parents are my biggest role models. And Israel and Judaism have always been like the biggest focus points in our house to the point where I couldn't even tell you what was going on in the news in Canada, but I could tell you what's going on in Israel at all times. So it was kind of yeah, my start. And then I was thrown into like a lot of different sports, whatever, as a kid. So I didn't really get to do a whole lot of Jewish type stuff growing up. Like I didn't really go to any of the camps or anything like that. So for me, really, my journey started a little bit in high school. I was introduced to kind of like the C-Teen and BBYO programs. And then slowly, as I got to university, my very first year, I was like, okay, something's missing. I feel like everyone goes through this phase of like, I need to reinvent myself. I'm no longer in high school. I'm now an adult, kind of on my own journey. And for me, that journey was like, okay, I've always loved being Jewish. I love being from Israel. I'm seeing all of this stuff on the news. I want to do something about it. So um, I started going to our like clubs week at the University of Calgary. And they have a whole entire week where they showcase every single club. And I went there every single week because I remember seeing online there was some club called Canadians for Israel, and I was like, perfect, that's where I want to be. And I went every single day. I couldn't find them, so I sent them an email, and they had responded saying that the people who were running it had just graduated, but if I want, they're happy to meet with me, and potentially I could kind of join them in like leading this club. And I think my response was genuinely like, I'm in like my second week of first year. I don't think that I really want leading this. Like I just got here. I have no idea what I'm doing here. But that honestly kickstarted my whole entire journey because they were actually the people who introduced me first to Stand With Us. And so I had reached out to Stand With Us and I was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. I was told to reach out to you. You guys said you would help me kind of get connected to this whole sphere of like talking about Israel or doing something on campus with relation to Israel. And it was a completely whole new world for me because even in high school, I was never the type of person who touched any kind of club. Like I was a competitive swimmer. I went to school. I like played piano. That was my whole entire life. Like I never, never was in any kind of leadership positions at all. And so that's really kind of what kickstarted me. And I had some pushback because it kind of was like, okay, like no one's really doing anything, but if you want, you could do something. And for me, it was like, oh my gosh, like I just wanted to join something and never wanted to really be like a leader in anything. I just kind of wanted to follow along, but I didn't really see there being anything on campus. So I started just kind of reaching out to people. The people who were running the Canadians for Israel at the time were super helpful, and or sorry, who had graduated from leading that.
Mhm.
They were super helpful. They kind of helped me along this journey, set me up, gave me like all of their materials and everything that I needed. And that kind of really started my journey with Stand With Us. And then later, I also had discovered that Hillel existed on campus. And I was like, okay, amazing. There's a Jewish organization. So then I also joined them. And that kind of really began my journey into everything. And that was really my
Yeah.
start.
Amazing, amazing. I thought I had an early start in my mid 20s, but you being in your second year, your second week of your first year, you beat me by a lot. Good for you. Good for you.
That's right. That's right. But I want to take a little bit of a step back. So, your parents were in Belarus, moved to Israel. You're born in Israel. Your family moves to Canada. Did you guys come to Calgary right away?
Yeah, we did come to Calgary right away, which I know is kind of odd. Toronto seems to be kind of that first stop for most people, but
Right.
yeah, somehow my parents, I think, had some kind of friends or something. So yeah, in Calgary we ended up, and that's kind of where I grew up.
And so, and how old were you when you moved here? Did you go to the Hebrew school? Did you go to Akiva? Did you, or the Jewish Academy? Like, how did that, that experience and sort of integrating from, you know, being Israeli? Obviously, you moved here before the age of 12. And the reason I know that is because you don't have an accent.
Yeah,
Apparently, 12 years old is the year. If you come after 12, you're going to be burdened with an accent for the rest of your life. Before 12, no accent. So that's my gauge.
yeah, yeah. So I moved pretty young. I think I moved like around the age of 2 or something. So it was
Okay.
like pr very much like after the Second Intifada. And I went to Akiva. That was kind of my first introduction into Jewish school. And it was really, really amazing. We loved Akiva. And then moving to a public high school with no Jewish education was very, very scary and very different. And clearly, I really missed that because then when I found CT in high school, that was like amazing. And I was like, wow, like I'm not the only Jewish person in my class. And so that was really
Right.
amazing. And obviously, then I've now kind of got into this field. So I clearly really love doing this.
So up until high school, then you are very much surrounded by, Jewish community, Jewish teachers, institutions, if you will. Now you're in high school. It's a public high school. Which public high school did you go to? And at that point, did you really feel did you experience any anti-Semitism? Did you, was there any feeling of like, oh wow, now suddenly things feel different? Or, you did see C-Teen, and I want you to explain what C-Teen is. And
Hmm.
I keep wanting to say BYOB, and I know that's not what you're supposed to say. BBYO.
BBYO.
Yeah. So if you kind of go through that experience, and then we'll hit back into the university.
Totally, yeah. So I went to Dr. E.P. Scarlett High School, which was a good school. And then I think I didn't necessarily experience like something crazy that kind of changed like the course of where I wanted to go, but there were like slight things that started to arise. Like for example, whenever we would do like studying the Holocaust in social studies, there would always be, like jokes, or also people thought doing like the Hitler salute was funny, or drawing swastikas was funny, or making these jokes, which was like just mind blowing to me because we are like literally learning about the Holocaust, and this is kind of like what people were doing. And so I think that to me was very much uncomfortable to see. And so I think that kind of slowly these things started building up. The other big thing that I kind of noticed, and even among like, the few Jewish people that I did know in the school, was this very common fear of telling people, first of all, that they were Jewish, or even more so if they were from Israel. There was this huge fear that people did not want to speak about it. And to some extent, I also understood that because my parents, like we had like generations of family that had been persecuted and been told to hide themselves. And so like I
Hmm.
also was kind of getting this advice of like, don't tell people you're Jewish, or like, like careful with your friends. Like it's only if you really know someone, tell them you're Jewish. And to me, I obviously understood where they were coming from, but this was such like a huge part of me and my life and what I saw at home that I didn't want to hide it. In fact, it's probably the thing that I'm most proud of. I love being Jewish. I love being from Israel. I love talking about it. And so it was so hard to hide. And a pretty kind of common joke that I have with friends is that within like 2 minutes of meeting me, I'm like, yeah, I'm Jewish, and like telling you like everything about myself. And I want more people to feel that way. And I like didn't want people to have this fear. But in high school, I had no idea what to do. I just kind of like accepted this and just kind of talked to my friends about it. Or I specifically remember my best friend, and we're still best friends now, but we like met in high school. And I just remember she really encouraged my love of Israel, even though she's not Jewish. But I would always talk about like, oh my gosh, like on the news, I'm seeing people talking about Israel and saying they're responsible for this and this and this. And that's just not the case. Like, my family's there, they're telling me these things. It's just not true. And so I think talking to her about this and being able to talk about my feelings and my actual experiences and my family's experiences kind of led me to like find out that this was something that I was really passionate about, that I cared about. And I think that she also gave me the big push later when I got into university.
Yeah, it sounds like and Don, I'm really glad we sort of dove into who Yael is and where you come from, Yael, because there's a part, and we see this. I have, and many of us do, within the Calgary Jewish community, have lots of friends who either grew up behind the Iron Curtain or whose parents, grandparents were Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, and there is that paranoia. There is that, and it's justified. I mean, that was a very, and I think the other interesting part is what seems to be like you're sort of bucking that notion of hiding who you are, which I think is culturally would have been instilled in you. You're bucking that, and you're saying, no, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to be forthright with it. And I don't know, do you think that I guess, is that a protective measure to say, hey, you're on notice. I don't want you saying anything. I don't want, is this just a pride thing? How has that served you? How was that done for you in terms of establishing your identity, protecting you, throwing you into challenging situations? Tell us what it's like to be a young, proud Jew.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so it definitely, like I said, I've always been really proud of it, but there definitely was a period of time where it was a lot easier to just tell people when people would ask me where I'm from, because my name obviously suggests to people that I'm likely not from here. And sometimes it was way easier to say, oh, I speak Russian. And then that way I didn't really have to answer the question of where I was from. And people would kind of assume that that's where I was from. And I mean, realistically, I grew up with stories of my parents telling me, when they were in grade school, how they would like have their report cards and there would be Jew written across their report cards by their teachers or by their professors. My grandparents were spat on in streets and called like every slur under the sun. And so I think my parents obviously wanted to move to Canada to give like me and my siblings the best chance at a good life. And so I think for them, knowing that these are the experiences and then also kind of seeing these things carry over into Canada, the easiest thing for them was just like, you know what, like just try not to tell people, like we'll be Jewish at home, but just like give yourself the best opportunity. And to me, I just like I could see how much my parents loved Israel. And I remember their story of when they moved to Israel for the first time. And they said that like even though they had grown up in Belarus, they had never felt at home. They just constantly had to hide themselves. They were scared. And it wasn't until they set foot in Israel that they said like it was crazy. Like it truly felt like home. And it didn't matter that everyone around them was, like different. They looked different. They spoke different languages, but that everyone felt like home. And it was the first place they
Mhm.
never had to hide themselves. And I think seeing my parents speak about like Israel and being Jewish with such pride, to me when I was growing up, I was like, I don't know why I have to hide this. Like I love this. And I even
Mhm.
remember like all of my projects at school, whenever we had to do like an all about me project, I always in the middle had I'm from Israel and like these like huge bubble letters.
Amazing. Amazing. I love it.
Yeah, but then obviously, like as I grew up, I kind of could understand and see where my parents were coming from. And I think I just kind of at some point decided that I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel scared and have to hide a part of myself, because ultimately when I'm hiding the parts of myself that are Jewish or are Israeli, I'm not showing up authentically. I'm not
Mhm.
myself. I'm like being some kind of other version of myself. And I think also finding some really good friends along the way who, were amazing allies and encouraged me. And they're like, no, you shouldn't be scared. Like, speak up. Like, we love this about you. And also, I think hearing that really encouraged me. And then, of course, like getting into all of these different clubs, like when I started university and, did find Stand With Us and found Hillel and eventually started up SSI. I think all of these things encouraged me because we just kept building up like a community, this like huge community of people where even if, for example, in your classes, you maybe felt scared to say you were Jewish or Israeli, at least you knew that there was this huge backing of people that were behind you and supported you and felt the exact same way. And
Mhm.
even now, I've also started my master's of physiotherapy, and I kind
Mm.
of am starting to feel this fear again, where post October 7th, we kind of know everything that's been happening on social media, and I don't really know, where people stand or what they've heard. And it's kind of unfortunate to now also then again be in a space where I'm in a little bit of a less, Jewish space, and to also then again kind of have this fear when people are asking me. And then I'm like, no, no, like I can't have this fear. Like I'm proud, and ultimately like people need to know me for me, and I can't, be living like on non authentically. Like I have to show up as myself, and the biggest part of me and who I am is the part of me that is Jewish and grew up on Jewish values and Israel and everything that Israel stands for. So, uh,
Ugh, I mean, it's just it's you're not only inspiring, it's infectious. It's your words carry so much weight because it comes from here, and it's like I recall when my brother and I did a toy drive in November of 2023. That feeling of absence, like of being in Israel, that we need to contribute. We arrived there, and then that feeling of stepping out from the airport, and it's just a feeling of home, right? The whole driving through Tel Aviv down, it's all flags everywhere, and it's just the only place in the world where we're the majority. And so it's such a different feeling, and I think that kind of inspired where I was kind of going with it initially. Throughout your whole life up to high school, you're in these Jewish institutions, sort of Jewish majority areas, even though, maybe go to the JCC, maybe go, public places, which is fine, but you're always kind of surrounded by that. And then suddenly you're not. And that exposure, led you to joining things like BBYO and C Team. Now, again, just for clarity, I do want to quickly, what is C-Teen? What is
mhm.
BBYO? How do you get involved in that because I think a lot of people do that trek private school of the Jewish Academy or Akiva, and sometimes not. But then, what options are there for them in high school?
For sure. So yeah, I think CTN is run by Chabad versus BBYO is run by NCSY, or no, maybe NCSY is another one. So I'm not the expert on this. I didn't go
Okay.
to, yeah, I mainly went to CTN, which yeah is led by Chabad, and that one really is just bringing a bunch of Jewish high schoolers together. And for me, that experience looked like we would sometimes go to the rabbi's house, and they would just like have this tea night where you could ask any kind of questions, or even just like social nights and connecting and like seeing and meeting other people. And also for me, when I like didn't really know that many Jewish people, just like a kind of sprinkle in my high school, this was kind of my first instance of like, oh my gosh, like there's other people like me. And that kind of slowly built up like that like Jewish geography, and people are like, oh wait, like this person, this person. So yeah, that to me was just like so amazing. And then my younger brother also went there and had the same experience, and it's really amazing, especially when we don't have a Jewish high school in Calgary, and to have this place where you are able to connect with other people like you, I think you don't realize is important until it's taken away, and you're
Right.
like, oh, I
Right.
really do miss this.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Don, you beat me to it because I didn't want to let the alphabet soup get away on us. But for those of you listening, so many of you heard our podcast with Rabbi Matisoff a couple weeks ago, and so C-Teen is a Chabad program. NCSY so USY is an NCSY program that I think is maybe delivered out of Beth Tzedek. We'll talk about Beth Tzedek in the future. BBYO is really its standalone youth organization that isn't affiliated with any particular organization, but often runs out of I think they have space out of the Jewish Center, etc. So, I mean, we're pretty fortunate to have these youth groups. And Yael, as you're saying, without a Jewish high school, this is an amazing way, in addition to camp, in addition to a couple of the other organizations that run these programs. This is the way for Jewish youth to stay involved. Okay, now let's move on to the university years. Okay, so help us with a little bit of alphabet soup on this one. SSI. Tell us a little bit about SSI. Tell us a little bit about Hillel.
For sure.
Just a quick snapshot.
For sure. Yeah. So Calgary Hillel, their slogan is your Jewish home away from home. And that's really what it
That's
is. It's a place for, yeah, for Jews to connect. And they have a lot of, social time, and Jews and Brews is like their like bar night. And they have a lot of, yeah, really amazing programs that they run that's really catered towards, like helping the Jewish people in university connect and bringing them together. Of course, non-Jews are also able to join. And then the second organization, Students Supporting Israel, so SSI. So that one actually me and one of my friends brought to the Calgary campus in my fourth year. And so that one really is about more so about educating about Israel. So I think that while Hillel is kind of that like, bringing people together and like having these events and everything, SSI does more of like the education and hard hitting, like, I'm a Zionist, ask me anything type of programs. So obviously they intersect a lot and there's a lot of
Hmm.
partnership between the two. But then they also obviously have things where they are very strong in. And so they kind of do these also different events. And so yeah, they're both really amazing programs. I was part of both of them. And I think even majority of people obviously have interest in both and end up being, part of both organizations at some point.
Hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So would you?
So,
Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
well, I was just going to say, I mean, those are the two big focuses for Don and I on this podcast, and one is sort of community building, which it sounds like Hillel is there to build a little Jewish community, and the other side is advocacy, which sounds like SSI's focus was really there. Okay, now, what I'm curious about, we hear, and obviously Don and I are a year or two removed from campus. Um, we hear, we know that throughout this country, throughout the West, universities are felt to be ground zero. Yeah, tell us it's not. Tell us that everything's going great at U of C and MRU. But I say that in jest. What's the experience like as a Jewish student in these places right now?
Yeah, I really wish I could say that things are great, but there's a little bit more to that. When I was a student, that was pre-October 7th, and that was definitely interesting. It wasn't, all rainbows and sunshine, but I think that what I saw was people were a lot more willing to engage. Like, obviously, there was still, the common Israel haters and people who would make different comments, but I think that people were way more willing to actually approach us and engage and ask questions versus now after October 7th, it seems like people just don't want anything to do with like even either side at all. Like I think people see the words Israel or Palestine and they just kind of are like I like even if they don't know anything, just the fact that they know it's been on the news and that potentially it's messy doesn't matter what they think or like where they stand necessarily. They don't want to approach because even if they were to approach a table, no matter what they think, their fear is what other people are going to say or think, or if they have friends walk by or classmates and they're standing at a table that has an Israeli flag, what are they going to think?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we definitely see, I think, people being a little bit less likely to want to engage. So we've had to get a little bit more creative in the way that we do certain tables. That being said, though, I think that what we do really see, and that is unique at the University of Calgary, is a lot of allyship and a lot of support from people who are not Jewish but want to support us. And there's been a lot of experiences like that to the point where I believe it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, where the SSI board actually had more than half of the board made up of non-Jewish people, just allies who were there and wanted to support, which was so beyond incredible to see. And the times that we get this is from these tables, where sometimes we're being slammed with hate and people screaming at us. But then we have people who come up and say, like, you know what, like, good on you guys. Thank you for doing this. Like, we're with you. And end up then joining SSI or just coming to support a couple events until they realize, like, wow, like, I really want to come and support you guys. And I'm seeing the hate that you're facing. And that being said, there's also a lot of quiet allies who, maybe are very scared to approach, but then will DM SSI or DM us individually and say, like, I have friends who are very not supportive of this, but I just want to reach out and say that maybe while I can't say this to you at a table face to face, I really do support you guys and I really commend you guys for what you're doing. And I think that the other thing that we always say stand with this is kind of the 10-80-10 rule, meaning that 10% of us love Israel. And that's kind of like the preaching to the choir that we do. Where like, no matter what you say, like, especially for me, I'm not going to randomly be like, okay, peace out. I don't want to support the Jewish people or Israel anymore. That's not going to happen. You're not really going to change my mind. This is where I am.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
the other is true where there's another 10% where no matter what you say, people are just going to continue to, hate Israel or be anti-Semitic or say these horrible things that we've seen on social media or in person to us at tables. But then there's the 80% in the middle who, either don't care or are misinformed or, really have no idea where they stand. And ultimately, that's who we're trying to educate. And so oftentimes when we do see people or hear people doing these like horrible things, we just have to remember that these are the people in the 10% who are very, very vocal and trying to tell us that, they're the majority when they very much are not. Because even though there are really horrible things that are said and done and all of these things, there's always, always people who come up and will tell us some of the most incredible things or share a story of their trip to Israel. And there's been so many times where there's people who are like, oh, like I randomly took an internship in Israel and it was like the most incredible experience ever. And I had no idea or anything about Israel.
Hmm.
And I think that it's really those moments for when we table because ultimately these people are really the ones who, give us hope and keep us going and kind of remind us to keep showing up. And so I think to me, that's really the most important thing. That being said, I think that October 7th was, I mean, everyone knows, but really on campus was such a confusing time because for us, when it happened, I think it was October 15th, where we went to the University of Calgary and did a table where all we had, like usually our tables, we're very engaged, we're involved, we're interacting with people as they're walking by, we're trying to, catch their attention and talk to them. This was
Hmm.
the very first table where we were like, you know what, we're not interacting with anyone, we're just going to set up a table, put up a bunch of like pictures of the hostages and stand there with candles, and we're just gonna do a memorial. Like that's all we can do. We're hurting, but we need to do something.
Hmm.
And that experience to me, I think really shocked me because up until this point, every single time I had done a table, even though again we had a comment here or there, overall, they were really amazing experiences. This was the first time where it was not an amazing experience because instead of people coming up and telling us, they're sorry or that they're with us or that this is horrible, which is what we expected because like it was the most horrible event to have happened. And instead, we were swarmed by a group of people who were yelling at us and saying horrible things. And at one point, I remember this one girl started pointing at me and yelling that October 7th was the most beautiful event to have happened, that she hopes happens again and again and again. And I think to me,
Hmm.
like at this point, I had been working for Stand at this. So I was kind of used to people yelling at us and I was trained for this and all of this. But I think to hear this and then to kind of connect, like, like she could have been my classmate, or maybe she's a classmate of one of the students who are standing here. And the fact that, it's not even online. Like, I think sometimes with online hate, we know that these are people behind screens who are just like saying things into the void. But to have someone look at you, like a classmate, like we're both at the University of Calgary, we're both here to get our education, things like that. And to have someone say that to your face, I think was kind of a turning point for a lot of us where we were like, okay, like, well, like we really have to pivot what we've been doing because this is not what we were expecting. This is not
Hmm.
at all, like what we thought the response would be. And since then, there's been a lot of work that had to be done, including when we brought Elon Levy to the University of Calgary, and we were all barricaded into a room by a big mob who was calling us Nazis, and waiting for us to pretty much come out of the room to do what, I don't know, and we had to be escorted out of a back entrance. And also that,
Hmm.
had never happened. Like I'd only seen that happening in, maybe Toronto or maybe in the States at the bigger universities.
Hmm.
And I had never expected for it to come to Calgary. And again, the fact these are classmates and people that, you see in your classes. And so many of our students are even like, oh, like this person, is in my class. I see them like every Wednesday is like, I don't know, I can't understand it. So
Hmm.
but yeah, but that being said, there are of course a lot of really, really good tabling experiences that we've had. And I think that the more we keep showing up, the quieter the crowd gets because I think that what they're trying to ultimately do is silence us. And when they see that, we're gonna keep showing up no matter what they say, they kind of started to get a little bit quieter and we weren't getting swarmed as much. So we'll just keep showing up and we'll keep, doing what we're doing because we need to get the education out there. And as long as we're reaching even one person who, you know, says something good to us, then that's honestly, it's worth it for even just that one person.
That's I mean that's just incredible. And it's that whole experience of the pre-October 7th and the post-October 7th where there were still issues prior, but then it was just a completely different level. It seems that since then, things happen, and regardless of where we're at from whichever organization or institution we're involved in, we're continuously shocked and astonished. We never thought this was going to happen, and it seemed like each time there's an escalation. Um, and to see you stand your ground from that perspective, I think sometimes we as adults, what our go-to is, well, we have to do something. We have to make a change within these, educational institutions, and to see that the front line is being actually covered by students like yourself is comforting.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, there were a lot of things throughout that happened in Calgary that shocked us all. I mean, the Elon Levy thing that was insane. The from big and small, from the menorah lighting a couple of years back to events like that, to the Walk for Israel that was graffitied with epithets of threats of intimidation and death. These things continuously shock us. And instead, after you're done, so you graduated in the 23-24 year,
The 2022 year.
22 year, sorry. And then you were involved in these events like the Elon Levy, no longer as SSI, even though I know you supported them,
Mhm.
but as Stand With Us.
Yeah.
Now, you graduate. This is pre October 7th, and you're still kind of, I still need a little bit of Israel in my day to day here in Calgary. So what happens? Tell me that story. Why Stand With Us? What is Stand With Us? And then I want to get into some of the things that you've been doing since then.
For sure. Yeah. So Stand With Us, the way that I got involved so the first year I learned about them, I was working with one person from Stand With Us. And then when I got to my second year, I did something called the Emerson Fellowship, which is pretty much a year-long fellowship where typically, like 1 to 2 students are chosen from their universities and they are flown out to Los Angeles where they get trained on everything from like facts, history, how to combat claims, how to be a public speaker, leadership skills, pretty much everything that they need to know to then go onto their campus and be able to be leaders and lead in the Israel space. And so for me, I grew up as someone who the worst possible thing I could do was put my hand up in class. That was the scariest possible thing I could think of. And that's why to me, doing this fellowship, like I think my parents were even shocked that I wanted to do this. And I just I don't know, I just like loved like the idea of this organization and everything that I had kind of learned up until this point. And so I just flew to Los Angeles and I did this fellowship. And when you get there, especially as someone who came from Calgary, and as we know, it's not a very big Jewish community there, or sorry, here. But when I got there, all of a sudden I'm seeing all of these people who the one commonality that we have is that we have this passion for Israel and we see that there has to be some kind of change to be done on campus and we want
Right.
to do that. And to me, I had maybe like met like a person here or there who kind of like also had these thoughts, but I'd never seen like, a room with hundreds of people who all thought this way. And honestly, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here because there are people who were part of the student government and presidents of like this club and that club. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we have a singular club at the University of Calgary that has like, maybe like 10 people coming on a good day. Like I don't even know what I'm doing here. And then it didn't even matter. It didn't matter where you were coming from or what you did. Everyone was just like treated like like this is your opportunity to learn. And we got to, speak. And I remember one of the sessions that I did was public speaking, which again to me was mind blowing. I don't even know why I chose the session. And I ended up falling in love with it. I love the fact that I got to talk about
Israel and I wanted to talk about Israel. And I got back to Calgary so fired up and I was so excited to do programs. And I ran a ton of programs with my Hillel and the board there. And we just did program after program. And I just kept coming up with all these ideas of all the things that I wanted to do. But unfortunately, that was also the year of COVID. So my fellowship was cut short a little bit. But honestly, it didn't matter that I moved online and I started doing a bunch of presentations online. And to me, when the fellowship ended, I was like, no, it, it can't end. I need to keep going. I love this stuff and I love the community and especially seeing all these different people and what they were doing, what they were achieving. I was like, you know what? I want to do that, but I want to do it in Calgary. And so I just kept looking for opportunities. I kept reaching out and I kept trying to find what my next steps were going to be. And so I kept involved, and then eventually we get back to school. And then that's when I was like, you know what? I just think that we need something on campus that is going to really represent Israel specifically. And so that's when me and my friend had started up Students Supporting Israel. And we were like, you know what? Like, we are going to focus on specifically advocacy and advocating for Israel and making sure that there is something with Israel in the name that is on campus and at the University of Calgary. And so we started doing this. We started doing like we kind of like had worked behind the scenes to like build up a social media page and all of that. And we were like, you know what? I don't even know who in Calgary is going to be interested in this. It might just be the two of us running this club. And we opened applications, and the very first day we had 10 board applications, which to us was mind blowing because we it was a struggle to even get 10 people out to events. And I think that to me also showed that there's clearly a need for this and people want this on campus and people want to be talking about Israel. And shortly after that, my mentor from Sanothas had reached out to me to ask if I was potentially looking for a job. I wanted to go back to Sanothas, and to me, this was like an actual dream because I remember seeing all of the campus managers like, you know, on stage and educating, doing these presentations, and I was like, wow, like I don't even know what I have to do to get there, but you know, probably not for me because I'm just someone from Calgary. Calgary has such a small Jewish community, not gonna happen. And so then when she had reached out to me, I was just so like over the moon excited. And so I started working for Stand With Us pretty much my like last half of the semester when I was in school, and then I moved into full time. And honestly, to me, it was just a way to give back to this organization that to me had given me so much confidence and honestly this purpose and this like passion, and also showed me that like, you know, I can be passionate about Israel all I want, but before I had done this, I didn't really have any like tools or skills to put it into action. And they really showed me all the things that I can do and gave me the tools and gave me the resources and really everything that I needed to be able to do what I wanted to do. So to me, I love this job with all my heart. And I know that I always say that, you know, maybe people think I'm saying this because I work for them now, but genuinely, even before I was hired, I was doing this. So to me, this is just a way to give back. And when I work with students now in Western Canada, I just want them to have the same experience I had because to me, like I really got a family at Stand With Us and I got this network of people, especially because I was in Calgary and felt like, you know, we're such a small community. It was like, wow, like I have people all around the world and across Canada and North America who are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. And so I can keep this fight alive because they're also doing it.
Amazing.
We can kind of relate to Yael's notion of her and one friend wondering if anybody else is going to show up. It sort of reminds me of two guys starting a podcast,
That's right.
wondering if anybody's going to listen. But Yael, same. People want it. Our community needs. I think our community really needs each other right now, and you found that on campus and among our youth, our students, and Don and I are finding that within the community as well. So I am we're kindred spirits that way. Um, okay, so you have a passion for advocacy. You have a passion for the knowledge. You are someone that maybe naturally didn't come off as someone that's going to stand in front of an audience, but you found that. It sounds like okay. Now we know that campus and frankly even off campus is really when it comes to articulating the challenges, the misinformation, addressing those really important things. We know that that's intimidating for people. I mean, for those of us that have, like, even those of us who've been in advocacy and understanding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict for 80 years, we know how complex it is.
Mhm.
How do we help our students? And frankly, if you've got suggestions on beyond our students, it sounds like your role is in helping to educate. How do we get people to that point? Do you have resources? Do you do courses? Do you do in services? How do you get our people ready to discuss tough issues?
100%. So, yeah, so pretty much Stand With Us is an international organization with the aim of specifically doing Israel education and combating anti-Semitism. And so, like my job specifically focuses on campus, but we also have a high school program, and we also focus within the community. And really, our role, and I think what makes us stand out as an organization, is the fact that we have a whole entire research and strategy department where we have people who, spend like every single day looking into research and putting out factual information and booklets and workshops and resources. And we're trained to give like different kinds of workshops, presentations. If someone has an idea that we don't have, we will develop it with you. We work with you. And specifically for me within the campus department, really, we let the students shine. Like we never tell them what to do. Everything that happens on campus or anywhere else is led by the student. And we're just here as a resource and a support. So whatever it is that they're passionate about, we will help them achieve that. And so we have a ton of resources. Even on our website, we actually have a ton of booklets that are free to access and free to use. We have different informational sheets, or if there's anything at all that people need or want or are interested in, please, reach out to us, reach out to me. I
Mhm.
will, yeah, give you anything you need. If you need a workshop presentation, like we want to help. This is, what drives us and what we want to do. And with students, also something that we always say is when, you're never going to know every single possible thing. It's just impossible, especially in the space where there's always something happening and always something new and so much more to learn. And so, of course, we have a lot of resources and a lot of materials, but I think that there's also power in sometimes saying, I don't know, or this is a really great question. Let me look into it and get back to you. And sometimes for students, especially when you're standing at a table and you have no idea what people are going to bring to you or what kind of claim or misconception or anything like that.
Right.
And I never want people to have that fear of, well, if I don't know something, I'm not worthy of being here, because
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
definitely don't, I've been doing this for a couple of years now and I definitely do not know everything.
Mhm.
But having that, that comfort in, if I don't know something, it's actually like a lot more respectful to say, I don't know, but I want to look into this and I want to give you an answer. Let's connect later. And I think
Mhm.
the other important thing is being an advocate for Israel and the Jewish people looks like a lot of very different things. There's definitely people who are very, very good at, reciting every single date and every single fact, and they have everything in their brain. And I think there's also other people who have different strengths. And I think finding ways to cultivate those different strengths, like for example, for me, I love telling stories. And so when I'm talking to people, and something that I also encourage students to do is to use their stories and to use their experiences from Israel, whether it's personal or of a family, or even, now learning a hostage stories. And when people are talking to you, using those stories and saying, you know what, let me tell you about this person, let me tell you about my family, or let me tell you about my experience. Even for example, when people come up with the claim of an apartheid state, for me, I think of my time in Israel when I was walking my niece to school and her teacher hopped off the bus, and it was a very openly Muslim woman, and she ran to her and grabbed her hand, and they walked to school hand in hand. And to me, just telling the story of, a very simple experience that happened in everyday life, I think is
Mhm.
also very powerful. And I don't have to stand there and recite a bunch of facts to people, because oftentimes, sometimes facts is not really what people care about. And I think what really moves people is emotions and stories. And there's a very good way to be able to incorporate facts into your storytelling, because you're talking about your experiences or your family's experiences or other very powerful stories. And so I think that that's something else that is really important for people to know, is that being an advocate really does look like a lot of different things. And it doesn't mean that it has to be you standing there and reciting every single fact that you've ever learned.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very wise and sage advice. Just sometimes being, correct in your answer is a whole lot better than just giving an answer. And so taking that time actually builds trust, builds community, builds a lot of really great things. So that is wonderful advice. I think that from everything I've heard from your experiences, you've exercised a patience, which is a unique skill in situations like this because you've been thrown into extraordinary circumstances. Now, I do want to circle back to the Elon Levy thing because for those of us in the know about what happened there, Stand With Us also brings in speakers into Calgary. So some speakers have been Elon Levy, Natasha Hausdorff was another one, and more are coming. But Elon Levy was at one point a spokesman for the government of Israel, has since started his own sort of a Twitter account and sort of media conglomerate in order to speak about Israel. He's famously known for his eyebrows. And we were able to bring him to Calgary for an event. Now, when Stand With Us brings people for an event, there's typically two events, right? One on campus and one in the evening for the broader community and for whoever wants to come. On the day that Elon was here, I think, you mentioned a little bit that protesters started coming, and the protesters, I mean, this wasn't just, what were they going to do to us? They were threatening violence. Like this was intimidation at its core. This made, national and even international headlines. And this
Mhm.
happened here in Calgary.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, you know, everything that you do, what are some of the things that are upcoming for Stand With Us? What are some of the things like specifically without naming names, specifically, some of the more interesting experiences you've had with Stand With Us outside the Elon Levy event, that in a way, it's almost sometimes that fear inspires you to push further. And it seems that that's what it's been doing with you. So can you talk about some of those experiences that you've had, Yael?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of experiences to choose from. I think that for every event, honestly, I want to start off by saying that since I've been in this role, it like as a student, I understood what it was like to initiate these events and have to stand there. And now, because I'm in my role where I'm supporting students, really the only reason that I'm able to do my job is because of students. And the reason that, SSI exists and all these other clubs on campus, Hillel and all of that, the reason they exist is because every single year there are students who choose to, stand up and stand there and do this and give their time to this. And so I think that that's something that's really beautiful and something that keeps me going because if they can stand there and do that, especially after October 7th and in light of October 7th, then I can also stand there and do that. And even, for example, we at one point decided to paint, there's a couple rocks at the University of Calgary. And one time we decided to paint the rock in honor of the hostages. And we all gathered, we painted a rock. And we wrote out actually all of the hostages' names in chalk in remembrance. And there was no Israeli flag, nothing. It was just the ribbons, just their names, and just, bring them home soon. And the saddest part was that just a couple hours later, the whole entire rock was spray painted with no peace, no justice, with just these horrible messaging. And I think that kind of showed exactly what we stand for is that we were there to spread peace and we're there to spread light. And when I'm seeing, all of these students, especially again post October 7th, where there were people who didn't cower and hide and say, no, I'm scared or, I'm busy with school, but people stood up and said, no, like we now is more important than ever to stand here, no matter how dangerous it is or how, violent it's getting or dangerous, we're going to stand here and we're going to table and we're going to talk about Israel and we're going to bring all of this to the forefront. And I think to me, that to me is the most encouraging part of this whole entire job. And of course, there are times where, we see these horrible reactions from different groups on campus that are threatening us or are spreading these horrible messages. And, to that, I also want to stand up, but really it's seeing all of these students stand up and just say, no, we're going to show up really, really keeps me going. And especially all of the times where we've had people who have come up and said, thank you. Or sometimes we have international students who are walking by our table and they're like, wait a minute, there's a menorah here, or there's Bump or Beastly here. Like, wow, I had no idea that there was a community here, or like, I can't believe you're talking about Israel, like it's so dangerous now. And the fact that they are just walking by and find a community, I think is really, again, very, very encouraging. Or sometimes there are people who think that they hate Israel, and then we're in a conversation, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, like, wait a minute, I had no idea. You know what? I actually will go and look into what you just sent me. And later we actually end up receiving some, messages, or they end up coming to our table again and they actually will apologize and say, you know what, I approached you really aggressively and I now realize that maybe I have some more stuff to learn. Or I think sometimes even the most special moments we have is actually with people that, even though we disagree with, we end up having really incredible conversations. Like sometimes we've had Palestinians who come to our table and say that they're so incredibly sorry for the hurt that our people are facing. And we also have
Wow.
a chance, yeah, and we also have a chance to say, and we also understand that there's Palestinian suffering. We're obviously sorry for that. And it's this moment where, like we obviously both really care about where we're from, but we have this chance, at the University of Calgary where we're standing at a table to have this moment of connection. And sometimes, even though, we're like, okay, we obviously disagree on some points, that's fine. But in this moment right now, we're really sorry that your people are suffering. And I think also, having those experiences, and for all the bad experiences, having, these good experiences makes everything worth it.
So I just have a quick follow-up before I turn it over to Jared again. What's more satisfying, Al? Is it to that international Jewish student who's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know this was here," or that great conversation that converts somebody into? I'm not going to say our side because the side thing is a silly trope, but somebody who's softened up with some good information. What's more satisfying?
This is such a hard question because on the one side, like especially in Calgary, when you meet another Jew or another Israeli, you're like, oh my gosh, another one of us.
That's
Wow.
right.
But then on the other hand, like when you genuinely, especially when a conversation starts off really heated and you think that the other person's gonna yell at you and they obviously think that you're about to yell at them, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, we are agreeing on something, and then they end up, actually either even joining the board or joining our
Wow.
events or
Yeah.
something. And so then to see that, especially because I think it says a lot about the person, because we know that when someone tells us that we're wrong, it's so hard to say, yeah, I was wrong. And so to have someone say, you know what, I was wrong. I apologize for this. I think that that's also something that's so like really
Tragic.
commendable to see. And yeah, like you said, like I don't think that it's right to say there's necessarily sides in this conflict, but I think to see people who are willing to say, you know what, let me read more about this, and then follow it up by saying, I read about this, and you know what, I apologize for the way that I approached you. I'd like to talk about this more.
Wow.
Also, yeah, super amazing. So to answer your question, I really don't know which is more satisfying, but they're both
It's a tie.
really incredible. Yeah.
It's a tie, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Al, I'm just going to bring up this article real quick because I this was the National Post, I think actually yesterday. Why Canadian Jews are increasingly averse to identifying as Zionist despite supporting Israel, and um, I look at this, and as father of a soon-to-be university student, I know many of my friends in the same position. University, as we talked about, feels like ground zero. And all these experiences that you're talking about, the challenges, but also the wins, they don't happen if we cower. And as someone who didn't fancy themselves as being outspoken and out there, you have done that. You've taken on the challenge. And uh, you've had so many wins in a really hostile environment with SSI, with Hillel as a community builder, and now with Stand With Us. And I think I want to just harken back to our conversation with Shuv Majumdar from a couple weeks ago, where Shuv said, and you've alluded to Calgary's small size a number of times, but Jewish Calgary does something right that a lot of places could learn from. And frankly, I think there are a lot of students and a lot of young leaders that could learn from you. And you are awesome. You are awesome. I went out to Camp BB a couple years ago to talk about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and I said, you guys, you know what you have to be? You've got to be awesome. And you are awesome. Good for you. We're really, I don't want to condescend you and say we're proud of you, but we're proud to have you as a young Jewish Calgarian. So keep up that amazing work. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the work you do. And I hope you're an inspiration to some of our young people and some of our older people to not be afraid to be a Zionist, to not be afraid to be a Jew, because that is their goal. As you stood there on October 15th, you recognized their goal is to silence us. And the more you were clear to them that you would not be silenced, the quieter they got. And so, Yasher Koach, thank you for all the great work you do.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, I do just recall at the outset we did have a thing. There's an event coming up that we'd be remiss if we don't bring up right now. So, Yael, please tell us about this event. It's an SSI event coming up in commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So January 24th, it will be a Violins of Hope, where there will be a presentation about a violin that was restored and some really beautiful stories shared. So please come and support the Calgary Jewish students on campus, and we'd love to see you all at this event.
Okay, and how do they seek more information on this?
There will shortly be some advertisements posted, so stay tuned.
Okay, stay tuned, and we will share them on our Facebook and Instagram pages as well. Yael, everything Jared and has said, it's you know, I'll have more to say, and we'll toss it into the intro. But I do some work sometimes with Stand With Us, and it's an honor to work with you. And you don't only do this; you're also on volunteer boards on Federation. You're like you're just you keep getting involved. This is for those who don't know the name Yael Berkovich, you will very much know it in the years to come. Yael, thank you so much for taking this time to chat with us. It's been an inspirational hour, and it's really filled my cup. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was awesome.
Okay. Thank you very much for the schmooze.